All right, so you're here because you want to learn stuff quickly, right? Like really cut through all the extra stuff and understand what's important about a topic without spending hours reading or sifting through tons of information.
That's exactly it. We're
Oh,
trying to take these big, complicated ideas and break them down to make them easy to understand, and even more than that, make them actually interesting and useful to you.
yeah, and that's what this deep dive is all about. Today, we're diving into a book called Hypnosis, a power program for self-improvement, changing your life and helping others.
Sounds intense.
It is. It's by William W. Hewitt, and it was published back in 1995 by Llewellyn Publications. So it's a little bit of a time capsule, but it's still super relevant.
Oh, for sure. It's like a snapshot of what hypnotic practices were like back then.
Yeah.
And this book is seriously comprehensive. Like it's a guide to using hypnosis, not just for yourself, but also to help other people make positive changes in their lives.
I mean, when we say comprehensive, we mean it. Hewitt covers it all. Weight loss, breaking bad habits, boosting your confidence, getting over phobias, you name it. It's in there. And he even gives you these really detailed word-for-word routines to actually use.
So it's not just theory. It's like a practical handbook.
Exactly. Now, a little bit about William Hewitt himself. He was actually a former officer in the Air Force, which I found really interesting.
Wow. A background in discipline and structure. That makes sense in a way when you think about the focus and control involved in hypnosis.
Yeah, and then he transitioned into writing for the general public and for businesses.
So someone who understands how to communicate complex ideas clearly and effectively.
Exactly. And here's a funny little detail. If you wanted to write to him back in the day, you could send a letter to a P.O. box in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Back when people still wrote letters.
I know, right? And get this, they actually asked for a self-addressed stamped envelope or $1 to cover the cost of sending a reply. Talk about a blast from the past.
A tangible connection to the author.
Yeah.
Like you said, a real time capsule moment.
So our mission today is to be your guide through this material. We're going to pull out the most important and interesting parts of Hewitt's book and give you a clear understanding of what hypnosis is all about, according to him. We're going for those key insights, the things that'll make you go, huh, I never thought about it that way, without overwhelming you with too much detail.
It's like we're giving you the cheat sheet to Hewitt's work.
Exactly. Okay, so let's jump right in. First things first. What exactly is hypnosis, according to Hewitt?
Well, he compares hypnosis to daydreaming.
Daydreaming, really?
Yeah, it's an altered state of consciousness, but it's not like you're completely out of it. Your brainwave activity shifts to something called the alpha frequency range, which is around 7 to 14 cycles per second.
So when your mind is just kind of wandering.
Exactly. And in this alpha state, your subconscious mind becomes more accessible. It's like a doorway opens up.
Yeah.
But you're still conscious. You're still aware of what's going on around you. You're just more focused internally.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not about losing control or anything like that.
Nope, not at all. It's more about directing your attention inward in a very focused way. And the techniques Hewitt talks about are essentially ways to intentionally guide yourself into this state so you can work with your subconscious mind.
And this is different from our normal waking state, right?
Right, he calls our normal alert state beta, which is when our brain waves are operating at 14 cycles per second or higher.
Yeah.
That's when we're actively thinking, problem solving, and engaging with the world.
So beta is like go, 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 and alpha is more like chill and focus.
Pretty much. And then he also briefly mentions theta, which is an even slower brainwave frequency associated with deep relaxation or even light sleep. But for hypnosis, that alpha state is the sweet spot.
So we're not trying to fall asleep here. We're trying to get into that focused alpha zone.
Exactly.
Which brings us to some of those common myths about hypnosis that Hewitt tries to debunk.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of misconceptions out there floating around.
Like what?
Well, one big one is that only weak-minded people can be hypnotized.
Right, like you have
Okay.
to be easily suggestible or something.
Yeah, but Hewitt actually argues the opposite. He says that people who are more intelligent often find it easier to enter a hypnotic state because they're able to focus their attention more effectively.
That's interesting. It's almost like hypnosis is a mental skill you can develop.
Exactly. And another myth he addresses is that you're unconscious when you're hypnotized.
Right. Like you're in a trance and have no idea what's happening.
But again, that's not true at all. According to Hewitt, you're actually in a heightened state of awareness. Your attention is just so focused inward that you're less aware of things going on externally.
So it's not about being out of control. It's about being super focused.
Exactly.
Okay, so for those of you listening who are intrigued by this whole hypnosis thing and maybe even thinking about using it to help others, what does Hewitt say are the most important qualities for a hypnotist to have?
Well, he's very clear about this. He puts ethical considerations first and foremost.
So it's not just about knowing the techniques.
Nope. It's about having a solid moral compass. He says the absolute essential qualities are integrity, honesty, genuine dedication to helping others, and a deep sense of caring for humanity.
So basically, you got to be a good person first and foremost.
Exactly. And then once you have that foundation, the next step is to learn the specific techniques and practice consistently to develop your skills.
Okay, so let's say you're back in 1995 and you've decided to set up a hypnosis practice. What kind of practical stuff did you need?
Well, Hewitt gives you a pretty detailed list.
Yeah,
First off, you need a dedicated office space, somewhere quiet and private.
makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't want distractions when you're trying to focus.
Right. And you need enough seating, at least 3 chairs, one for you, one for the client, and an extra one for a companion if needed.
Okay. And what about equipment?
Definitely a desk for paperwork,
Yeah.
and then the essential tool of the trade back then. Cassette tape recorder.
A cassette recorder. Wow, that really takes me back.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And you'd need blank tapes, too, because you'd record the hypnosis sessions for your clients to take home and listen to for reinforcement.
So even back then, the idea was to give people tools to continue working on themselves outside of the sessions.
Exactly. And of course, the usual office supplies, pens, paper, files.
Mm.
And he also specifically mentions having printed self-hypnosis instructions and dietary guidelines ready to give to clients.
Ah, yes, back when everything was printed out.
Exactly. He also mentions having a couple of pen lights handy,
Pen lights? What for?
probably for visual fixation during inductions, and a small card with a red dot for focused gazing. Typed up copies of his example routines, release forms for clients to sign business cards. And last but not least, a phone or some kind of answering system for managing calls.
So basically everything you need to run a professional practice even back then.
Pretty much.
Mm.
And he doesn't shy away from talking about the costs involved either.
Right, because setting up a practice isn't free.
He mentions rent for the office space unless you're working from home,
Mm.
and then advertising costs, which he says are essential but can really add up.
It's always a balancing act with advertising, trying to reach new people without breaking the bank.
Exactly. And he does suggest that working from a home office can be a good way to keep costs down, especially in the beginning.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about money. What was a typical fee for a hypnosis session back in 1994?
Hewitt mentions $50 per session as a standard rate at that time,
And how long were the sessions?
usually between 30 minutes and an hour. He felt that going much longer than an hour could actually be counterproductive.
Interesting. So it's not about quantity, it's about quality and focused work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that $50 usually included everything, the session itself, the cassette recording, and any printed materials.
Okay, so it was a pretty comprehensive package. And did he talk about whether that fee could change depending on location?
Oh yeah, he definitely mentions that. In areas with a higher cost of living like big cities, the fee might be a bit higher. But in smaller towns or rural areas, it might be lower to reflect the local economy.
So it's about being fair to both yourself and your clients.
Exactly.
Now, what was his philosophy on how many sessions someone might need? Did he believe in long-term therapy or a more short-term approach?
He was definitely a proponent of the short-term approach. He believed in empowering people to become self-sufficient rather than creating dependency.
So he didn't want people to become reliant on him for years and years.
Not at all. He actually set a personal limit of never seeing a client for more than 6 sessions total.
Wow, only 6. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. His goal was to teach people the tools they needed to take control of their own lives and then send them on their way.
I really respect that approach. It's about giving people the power to help themselves.
Exactly. And he believed that self-hypnosis was a crucial part of that process. He would actually start teaching clients self-hypnosis techniques as early as the 2nd session.
So from the very beginning, he was setting them up for independence.
Exactly. He also mentions that while he was willing to do house or office calls for an extra fee, he was a bit cautious about it, especially for female practitioners due to safety concerns.
That makes sense. It's always important to be mindful of those things.
Absolutely. He always put the well-being of both the client and the practitioner first.
Okay, so we've talked about the ethics, the fees, the equipment. Now let's get into the actual hypnosis session itself. What did Hewitt recommend in terms of the physical setup? Like, how should the client be positioned?
He experimented with a lot of different positions: sitting, standing, reclining, even lying down on the floor.
So he wasn't dogmatic about it.
Not at all. But he did have a preference. He liked for the client to be either in a comfy recliner or a straight-backed armless chair,
Why those chairs specifically?
because they offer good support and keep the client from getting too relaxed and falling asleep.
Yes. You don't want them nodding off in the middle of the session.
Exactly. He felt that those chairs struck a good balance between comfort and alertness. And interestingly, he also preferred to sit in a straight-back armless chair himself during sessions.
So it's about both the client and the hypnotist being in a good physical and mental space.
Exactly. And he specifically advised against having clients lie down on a bed or the floor for extended periods of time, because it increased the risk of them falling asleep or getting uncomfortable.
Makes sense. What about things like background music? Did he use that during sessions?
He mentions that a lot of hypnotists do use soothing music or nature sounds during inductions.
Yeah, like ocean waves or something.
Exactly. And he tried it out himself and found that some clients really enjoyed it. But he also found that he could get equally good results without any music at all.
So it was really a matter of personal preference.
Exactly. And he encouraged other hypnotists to experiment and see what worked best for them and their clients.
Makes sense. Now, there was one piece of equipment that he considered absolutely essential.
Cassette recorder.
Of course. Back to the trusty cassette recorder.
He said a portable AC/DC cassette tape recorder was a must-have
And why was that so important?
because he would record the main hypnosis procedure during the session and then give the recording to the client to take home and use for self-hypnosis practice.
So it was like giving them a personalized tool to continue working on themselves.
Exactly. And he also makes a really strong point about his absolute opposition to using electric shock devices in hypnosis.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that doesn't sound good at all.
He calls them dangerous, potentially harmful,
Mhm.
and completely unnecessary. He was very clear that a skilled hypnotist should be able to achieve the desired results without resorting to anything like that.
Good to know that he drew a firm ethical line there.
Definitely. Okay, so let's walk through the consultation process. What happened when a new client came to see Hewitt for the first time?
Yeah, what were those initial steps like?
Well, first off, he'd have them fill out a basic fact sheet just to get their name, contact info, and the main reason they were seeking hypnosis.
So kind of like an intake form?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then he'd go much deeper than that. He'd have a really in-depth conversation with the client about their reasons for coming to see him.
Because sometimes what people initially present with might not be the whole story.
Exactly. You
Oh.
got to dig a little deeper to understand the underlying issues.
Makes sense.
Oh.
So he was really trying to get to the root of the problem.
Exactly. And then he'd take the time to thoroughly explain what hypnosis is, how it works, and address any concerns or misconceptions the client might have.
So really educating them about the process.
Exactly. And if the client was still hesitant or unsure after that conversation, he wouldn't pressure them. He'd suggest they take some time to think it over.
So he was really respecting their autonomy.
Absolutely. And on the flip side, if he had any reservations about working with a particular individual, he would also decline.
So it had to be a good fit for both parties.
Exactly. It was about mutual trust and understanding.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And did he usually do some kind of pre-hypnosis demonstration?
Yeah, often he would. He'd do a simple exercise or two to show the client how natural and easy it can be to enter a hypnotic state.
So kind of like a little taste of what it feels like.
Exactly. And then if everything felt good, they'd move into the first actual hypnosis session.
So the whole consultation process was about building rapport, educating the client, and making sure everyone felt comfortable and safe.
Absolutely. And he really emphasized the importance of the do no harm principle, meaning he wouldn't work with anyone who he suspected might have a serious mental health condition, a significant medical issue, or a substance abuse problem.
So he was very careful about who he took on as a client.
Very careful. He would always refer those individuals to a qualified medical professional first.
That's really responsible. It shows that he was prioritizing their well-being above all else.
Exactly. And he even talks about the delicate issue of potential client infatuation.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's something you don't often hear discussed.
Right. But he acknowledges that it can happen, especially in a therapeutic relationship where there's a lot of trust and intimacy involved.
Makes sense. So what was his advice on handling that kind of situation?
He's said to be very firm with your boundaries. Avoid socializing with clients outside of sessions. And even consider having a spouse or partner act as a receptionist or be present during sessions.
So basically maintaining a clear professional distance.
Exactly. And he also recognized the potential for clients to become overly dependent on the hypnotist.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's easy to get attached to someone who's helping you.
Right. So he was very intentional about weaning clients off of sessions as soon as possible and teaching them self-hypnosis techniques to promote independence.
So it was all about empowering them to take control of their own life.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's move on to some of the specific techniques Hewitt describes in his book.
Yeah, like what are some of those relaxation routines he mentions?
He actually includes several examples in the book. One is called Routine A, which is a classic progressive relaxation exercise.
What's that?
It involves systematically tensing and releasing different muscle groups in your body. You start with your toes, then your feet, your calves, and so on, all the way up to your head.
So you're basically teaching your body to relax deeply.
Exactly. And the idea is that this physical relaxation will lead to mental relaxation as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And what are some of the other routines?
Well, there's routine B, which uses guided
It's
visualization.
like imagining yourself in a peaceful place.
Exactly.
Less-
Imagine any tension just draining away from your body like water flowing downhill.
Okay, I like that one. And are there any others?
Yeah, there's routine E, which uses a simple mental image of a blackboard with a circle and an X.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And the instruction is to mentally erase the X, which represents any thoughts or worries that are distracting you.
So it's a way to quiet your mind.
Exactly. And then there's routine G, which involves labeling different levels of relaxation.
So like saying to yourself, I'm feeling more relaxed now.
Exactly. You start by labeling your current level of relaxation, and then you gradually progress through deeper levels, associating each level with a number or a word.
So it's like a step-by-step process to guide yourself into deeper relaxation.
Exactly.
Okay, so those are some of the techniques for inducing hypnosis. What about self-hypnosis? How does Hewitt teach people to hypnotize themselves?
He dedicates a whole chapter to it, chapter
Okay.
12. And he emphasizes that the main difference between traditional hypnosis and self-hypnosis is simply that you're both the operator and the subject.
So you're basically hypnotizing yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he recommends starting with a kind of self-consultation, meaning you take some time to really think about why you want to learn self-hypnosis. What are your goals? What do you hope to achieve? How do you think it can help you or even help others? And he encourages you to write all of this down.
So it's about being really clear about your intentions.
Exactly. And then for the initial training period, he recommends using recordings.
Recordings, like cassette tapes again.
Yep. He suggests recording your own voice, guiding yourself through one of the relaxation routines, and including suggestions about your ability to learn self-hypnosis effectively, to feel comfortable and responsive to your own voice, and to enter a hypnotic state more easily each time.
So you're basically creating your own personalized hypnosis tapes.
Exactly. And then on subsequent days, he recommends recording and using different relaxation routines, followed by personalized suggestions that are tailored to your specific goals.
So it's a progressive process of deepening your ability to enter a hypnotic state and then using that state to work on the things you want to change.
Exactly.
Now, this is really interesting. He also talks about creating a private room in your mind.
Oh yeah, that's one of the key concepts in his approach to self-hypnosis.
What is it?
It's essentially a mental sanctuary, a place you can go to in your imagination where you can relax, focus, and work on your goals without distractions.
So it's like a mental retreat.
Exactly. And he encourages you to really build out this room in your mind to make it as detailed and vivid as possible. You can add furniture pictures, colors, anything that makes you feel comfortable and focused.
I like that. It's like creating your own personal space for inner work.
Exactly. And he says you can use this room for all sorts of things. Setting goals, working through problems, accessing your creativity, visualizing your desired outcomes.
Wow. So it's a really versatile tool.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, now let's talk about some of the specific applications of hypnosis that Hewitt covers in his book.
Yeah, like how can you use hypnosis to break bad habits?
He has a really interesting example that he calls the popcorn case.
A popcorn case.
Yeah, it involved a woman who had a really strong compulsion to eat popcorn. Like she couldn't stop herself.
Okay, so a serious popcorn addiction.
Pretty much. And he used hypnosis to tap into her aversion to another smell. The smell of wet chicken feathers.
Wet chicken feathers. Yuck.
Okay, no, right? So he basically created a strong association between popcorn and that repulsive smell and feeling.
And that helped her break the habit.
Apparently so. It's a pretty extreme example, but it illustrates the power of using aversion therapy in hypnosis.
Wow, that's pretty wild. What about using hypnosis to overcome phobias?
For phobias, he recommends creating personalized recordings that combine relaxation techniques with positive suggestions and visualizations that are specific to the fear.
So, for example, if someone has a fear of spiders.
You'd create a recording that guides them into a relaxed state and then gradually introduces the idea of spiders in a safe and controlled way. You might start with just the word spider, then a picture of a spider, then maybe a video, and so on.
So you're slowly desensitizing them to the fear.
Exactly. And you'd also include suggestions about feeling calm and confident in the presence of spiders.
So you're basically rewiring their response to the fear.
Exactly. And he gives specific examples for different phobias. Like for agoraphobia, which is a fear of open spaces, He suggests visualizations of walking through parks and shopping malls, feeling relaxed and safe.
And for claustrophobia, which is a fear of enclosed spaces.
He suggests visualizations of being in small rooms or elevators, feeling completely at ease.
So it's about using the power of imagination to change your emotional response to a situation.
Exactly. And he also stresses the importance of incorporating general positive affirmations and visualizations into the recordings, like appreciating all aspects of your world and focusing on your strengths and abilities.
So it's not just about getting rid of the fear, it's about building up positive emotions and beliefs as well.
Exactly.
Now, he also has a whole section on using hypnosis to help the elderly, which I found really touching.
Oh, yeah. He recognizes that older adults often face unique challenges.
Like what?
Well, feelings of diminished purpose or usefulness, physical discomfort or limitations, social isolation and loneliness.
Those are all really difficult things to deal with.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And he suggests using hypnotic suggestions to address these issues specifically.
Like what kinds of suggestions?
Things like suggestions for maintaining physical strength and vitality, for staying active and engaged in life, for taking responsibility for your own well-being, and also suggestions for appreciating both the joy of companionship and the peace of solitude.
So it's about finding a sense of balance and fulfillment even as you age.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he highly recommends a visualization called the Seashore Trip for older adults.
What's that?
It's a guided visualization where you imagine yourself walking along a beautiful beach, feeling the sand between your toes, the sun on your skin, the sound of the waves. It's very relaxing and rejuvenating.
I can see why he recommends that one. And he actually shares his own personal experience with hypnosis as a senior citizen, right?
Yeah, he talks about how he's continued to find success and fulfillment in his work as a writer and hypnotist, even in his later years.
That's really inspiring. It shows that age doesn't have to limit your potential.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving on to pain management. How does Hewitt approach using hypnosis for pain?
Yeah, because that's something a lot of people struggle with.
He makes a distinction between acute pain, which is sudden and intense, like from an injury, and chronic pain, which is ongoing and persistent.
So different types of pain require different approaches.
Exactly. For acute pain, he recommends learning self-hypnosis techniques so you can quickly alter your state of consciousness and manage the pain as soon as it arises.
So it's like having a tool in your back pocket that you can use in an emergency.
Exactly. And he even shares a personal anecdote about how he used self-hypnosis to manage pain when he cut his chin shaving.
So it's something he's used himself in real-life situations.
Absolutely. Now, for chronic pain, he suggests a slightly different approach.
Like what?
He recommends using a recorded hypnosis induction followed by guided visualization.
What kind of visualization?
He talks about imagining a warm, white healing light bathing the area where you're experiencing pain.
So you're using the power of imagination to promote healing.
Exactly. And he also includes suggestions for pain relief and relaxation.
So it's a combination of physical and mental techniques.
Exactly.
Okay, what about using hypnosis in the business world? Did Hewitt talk about that?
He did. He actually believed that hypnosis could be incredibly beneficial in the workplace.
In what way?
Well, he saw it as a way to help employees reduce stress, manage their time more effectively, improve their communication skills, and boost their overall performance.
So basically using hypnosis for self-improvement and professional development.
Exactly. And he even saw potential for addressing things like alcohol abuse and improving overall health and well-being within companies.
That makes sense. But it sounds like he didn't have a lot of success trying to introduce these ideas.
Unfortunately not. He
Mhm.
talks about how he tried to get several companies he worked for to embrace hypnosis, but they weren't receptive.
Why not?
He encountered a lot of skepticism, resistance, even outright rejection from management. He felt like they just didn't understand the potential benefits.
It's a shame they weren't more open-minded.
Yeah, he was really disappointed by their lack of vision. And he notes, with a bit of irony, that all three of those companies ended up going bankrupt.
Wow. Well, maybe they should have listened to him.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Okay, now this next topic is a little bit out there.
What is it?
It's about using self-hypnosis for spiritual exploration.
Oh, wow. Okay. Tell me more.
Well, Hewitt suggests that you can use that private room you create in your mind during self-hypnosis to connect with your higher self or even with spiritual figures.
So like having a conversation with your inner wisdom or with a spiritual guide.
Exactly. He says you can mentally invite these beings into your room, explain your problems or challenges, and then just listen for any guidance or insights that might come through.
That's a really fascinating concept.
It is. And he believes it works because your consciousness can connect with the consciousness of others regardless of their physical presence.
So it's like tapping into a higher level of awareness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he emphasizes that this is intended as a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
It's not about getting concrete answers or advice, but rather about receiving inspiration, guidance, and a sense of connection.
Okay. I can see how that could be really powerful for some people.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to regression. What does Hewitt say about using hypnosis to explore past events?
Yeah, because that's something that's often associated with hypnosis.
He calls it a time trip, and he says it could be used to revisit earlier periods in your current life or even potentially past lives.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
Can be. And he cautions that it's a technique that should only be used by experienced hypnotists because there's always the risk of uncovering traumatic memories.
Yeah, that makes sense. You wouldn't want to re-traumatize someone.
Exactly. So he outlines a very specific technique that involves inducing a deep state of relaxation and then using guided visualization to gradually bring the person back to the desired time period.
And how does he do that?
He often uses the analogy of a fog bank slowly dissolving to reveal the past scene.
Okay, I can picture that.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
The person is encouraged to observe the experience as if they're watching a movie.
So they're not fully reliving it, they're just witnessing it from a detached perspective?
Exactly. And he also incorporates a special keyword, ran-lex, that can be used to immediately bring the person back to the present moment if needed.
So it's like a safety mechanism.
Exactly. And he stresses the importance of using careful wording and avoiding leading questions during regression. You don't want to implant any ideas or interpretations into the person's experience.
So it's about facilitating recall without influencing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he also briefly mentions the concept of progression, which is the opposite of regression.
So instead of going back in time, you go forward.
Exactly. But his main focus in the book is on regression.
Makes sense. Okay, now, Chapter 8 of his book is like a treasure trove of specific suggestions tailored to different issues.
Oh yeah, it's packed with examples.
Can you give us a few to give us a sense of the range of things he covers?
Sure. For depression, he suggests focusing on cultivating positive thoughts and taking control of your emotional state. For public speaking, he suggests feeling relaxed, confident, and in command. For healing, he suggests visualizing the affected area as being completely healthy and using the word gone.
So he's using words and images to direct the subconscious mind towards healing.
Exactly. For longevity, he suggests giving your mind a direct command to promote a long and healthy life. For love and trust, he suggests radiating warmth and acceptance towards others. For money management, he suggests budgeting wisely and feeling abundant.
Wow, that's a lot of different areas.
He also includes suggestions for overcoming procrastination, improving reading comprehension, boosting self-confidence, addressing sexual issues, managing weight-releasing anxiety.
It's really amazing how many different things you can address with hypnosis.
It really is. And he provides specific wording for each suggestion so you can use them directly or adapt them to your own needs.
So it's like a recipe book for positive change.
Exactly. Now, he also has a section specifically on using hypnosis with children.
Oh, right, because kids are different.
They are. They're naturally more suggestible than adults because their brainwave activity is predominantly in the alpha range already.
So they're kind of in a hypnotic state most of the time anyway?
In a way.
Mm.
And because of that, they respond really well to shorter, more action-oriented routines.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
They have shorter attention spans than adults.
Exactly. So he describes a couple of routines specifically for kids. One involves having them bend over and then safely fall into your arms.
Okay, that sounds fun.
And then you immediately follow that with a brief, direct suggestion like, you will stop wetting the bed, or you will feel calm and confident during your spelling test.
So it's like using a playful physical action to get their attention and then planting the suggestion.
Exactly. And the other routine involves having them follow your finger with their eyes, which leads to wrist relaxation, and then you give the suggestion.
So again, it's about using physical movement to focus their attention.
Exactly. And he also mentions that the seashore trip visualization and a balloon release routine are particularly good for kids.
I like that. It's about making it fun and engaging for them.
Absolutely. Okay, now what about stage hypnosis? Does he talk about that?
Yeah, I'm curious about his take on that.
Well, he explains that the main purpose of stage hypnosis is entertainment.
Right. It's about putting on a show.
Exactly. And stage hypnotists typically select volunteers from the audience who seem like they'd be good hypnotic subjects, people who are outgoing and uninhibited.
So they're looking for people who are willing to play along.
Exactly. And then they use quick induction routines to bring those people into a light state of hypnosis and give them suggestions to do funny or surprising things.
Like what kinds of things?
Oh, you know, the classic stuff. making them think they're a chicken or that they can't remember their name.
Yeah, I've seen those acts before. It's pretty entertaining.
It can be. But Hewitt does caution that an inexperienced or careless stage hypnotist could potentially harm someone.
So it's important to do it ethically and responsibly.
Absolutely. And he notes that stage hypnotists often tell their subjects that they won't remember anything that happened on stage.
Probably to avoid any embarrassment afterward.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so to wrap things up, Hewitt really emphasizes the importance of belief and practice in hypnosis.
Yeah, because it's not magic. It's a skill you have to develop.
Exactly. He stresses that hypnosis works by removing mental obstacles and by helping you access your own inner resources.
So it's not about forcing you to do something you don't want to do. It's about giving you the tools to change from within.
Exactly. And he says that consistent practice is essential for making those changes last.
Because you're basically training your subconscious mind to accept the new beliefs and behaviors.
Exactly. Repetition is key.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of information from William Hewitt's book. What are some of the key takeaways that really stand out to you?
I think one of the biggest ones is that hypnosis is not as mysterious or complicated as people often think.
Yeah.
It's a natural state that we all have the ability to access.
Yeah, he really demystifies it.
And he also emphasizes the power of self-hypnosis for personal growth and change.
That's a really empowering message.
It is. He's basically saying that we all have the ability to shape our own realities through the power of our minds.
And that's what this deep dive has been all about, giving you the tools and knowledge to do just that.
Exactly.
So for those of you listening, I hope this has sparked some curiosity about hypnosis and its potential applications in your own lives.
It's definitely a fascinating subject with a lot to offer.
And here's a final thought to leave you with. If we can learn to master our inner states through techniques like self-hypnosis, what other possibilities might open up for us? What other limitations might we be able to overcome? What kind of lives could we create for ourselves? It's something to think about.
It definitely is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of hypnosis.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.